This is the Sales Babble Podcast, episode 459, How to Unstuck Stuck Deals.
Welcome to Sales Babble, the podcast that shares selling secrets for non-sellers. And now your host, Pat Helmers.
Hello, Sales Babblers. This is Pat Helmers, and have you ever had a deal that won't move forward and you're just not sure what to do? You don't want to call it a lost deal, but it's frustrating, right? You're working with an advocate in the organization, and they're all about you. But not everybody in the company wants to move forward. You don't have to be Lao Tzu to know that failing to adapt has profound consequences. So, what's a seller to do to unstuck a deal? Well, that's the topic for today. But before we start, make sure and subscribe to the podcast on whatever app you're listening to, and also follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and myself on LinkedIn. You can find links in the show notes. And now today's chapter, Stuck Deals. With no urgency, today looks like yesterday. With no change in priorities, tomorrow looks like today. Change instills fear and doubt. The status quo is defended. Douse fear as water douses fire. Mitigate risk and grease the rails of change. Deals don't unstuck themselves. A slow river knows it will get there eventually. And now today's story. Pat and Chris met for their weekly one-on-one. For the second month, Pat asked about the lack of progress on one deal. "What's going on here?" queried Pat. "I thought this deal had legs and would have been closed by now." "Me too," said Chris. "But once Lee, the CFO, started getting involved, IT started getting scared. Production wants to move forward, but nobody wants to accept any risk." Pat nodded. "Like I always say, our greatest competitor is the status quo. They've not embraced the risk-reward trade-off. This is where you need to step it up." Pat then went on. "Keep focusing on the reason they originally reached out to us. Make it clear it's only going to get worse the longer they push off the decision. For each of the decision makers, peel them off, one by one, and listen to their concerns. I bet we can address each and every one of them. This prospect is not that different from all our other clients. Be patient, listen well, show caring, and we can unstuck this deal." According to author Shannon Alder, fear is the glue that keeps you stuck. Faith is the solvent that sets you free. This applies to sales too. Change can be exhausting, frustrating, and frankly inconvenient. But change is also constant in all our lives. Lao Tzu depicts the path of life as in constant motion and flux. When helping our clients, we must keep this in mind, for it is the path of sales too. Have faith, and it will all work out. To download a copy of this week's Tao of Sales Babble chapter, you can find it in the show notes at www.salesbabble.com. And while you're there, you can sign up for our brief weekly newsletter with links to the podcast conveniently placed in your inbox. Next, if you could do me a favor and share this episode with a friend who's also interested in growing their selling skills, please do. On whatever app you're listening to, subscribe to Sales Babble and share this episode with your friend. Word of mouth is the premier way of growing listeners. Did you know that podcasting is the easiest way of turning your executives into thought leaders? You do this with content that reaches your ideal clients. Have you heard that podcasting's the new blogging? Learn more about Habanero Media my podcasting agency for B2B brands. Let me help you start a podcast that will accelerate your sales today. Learn more at habaneromedia.net. Let's talk about what you can do to stand out for the competition. With that said, that's all I have for this week, folks. Until next Tuesday, take care and have a highly successful and profitable selling day.
Thank you for listening to the Sales Babble podcast. Find us at www.salesbabble.com.
This is a production of Habanero Media.